guys, welcome back to Grounding, Growing, and Gardening. Tonight we're talking tomatoes. It is late. I finally got the baby to bed and had a little free time. I was gonna repot these guys, and so I thought I would give you a couple of tips on starting and repotting your tomatoes. So if you can see, this is a teeny tiny little pot, just 4 cells. And I actually started 4 different kinds of tomatoes. I've already up-potted these. And these are a landrace currant tomato. There's 7 of them in this little 6 pot. And this takes up so much space. You can see because they're still pretty small, they don't need any more than they've got. But what I decided to do tonight is I'm going to be repotting these champagne bubble tomatoes. All of these are cherry tomato varieties. They're all indeterminate, so that means they will continue growing through the season and can get upwards of 10, 15 feet tall, so they'll have to be trellised. But I've got, let's see, 6, 8, 9, 8 in this little pot right here. So they need a little more size, but because it's already almost April, I will be taking them outside pretty quickly, even though they're tiny, as fast as I can anyway. So I'm gonna up-pot them, and I'm just gonna show you guys a couple of little tricks when you are up-potting your tomatoes and how to get more out of your tomato stem for a nice root system, and then also what to do to get a little more from your actual production when it comes to your tomato production. So first things first, oh, I forgot a stick, hang on. Okay, so first things first, you could use probably any tool that you want. This is just a chopstick out of a set that I have. And I like using this because it's got a really blunt, kind of soft end, and it's not going to hurt my tomato seedlings. You can see that I have already filled my secondary pot all the way to the top where I want it to be with soil. And that is because we're going to be pressing holes in and then gently pressing the tomatoes down into the soil. So I'll go ahead and just start by, I've got, what did I say, 8? I'm just gonna make some holes, and I'm going pretty deep, almost to the bottom of the pot, and just making little holes, kind of giving it a little circle around, giving them a little bit more space than they had, obviously, in these little tiny 1-inch pots. And their roots will grow together, but they can be gently separated when it comes time to move them again. I hope I can fit them all in here. 6. Let's see. Let's do. Oh, there's a piece of bark. Do 7. And then we'll put one guy right in the middle. Now, if I was going to be leaving them for more than a couple of months, I would probably want to give them individual pots, but this will be okay. Like I said, the separation of roots may damage the roots a little bit because of the way I'm fixing to plant these, they're going to have a really nice root structure. So just start by taking them out. I'm just going to use this other pot to kind of catch any loose soil that I may lose. But because they are so well developed already, I can just pull them out. Now, the cool thing about a tomato is that whatever part of the stem is in the ground will reroot. And a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever seen a tomato grown wild, but they will, instead of being trellised up something, they naturally grow in kind of a big bush. And any place that the stem, even inside the leaf structure, touches the ground, they're going to produce new roots. So we're going to take advantage of that here. So we're just going to start by gently pulling these apart and making sure that they are separated pretty cleanly. You want to be careful. You don't want to disrupt any more of the root structure than you absolutely have to. And I've got some of these that are pretty close together and some that kind of separated. All I did to start these was just there were probably about 10 seeds, maybe 12. So I got pretty good germination out of this grouping. And I did buy all of my seeds this year from M.I. Gardener. So you can check them out. I got 63 or 64 varieties of seeds from them that some of them I've grown before and some of them I'm really excited to try. So this should be a fun season. All right, so what we're gonna do, this is super simple. You're gonna take your stem and you're gonna plant all the way up to that leaf structure, just right underneath it. So you're just gonna take your little poker and the little hole that you've made, might need to be a little bigger, and you're just gonna gently press it down into the soil as far as you can get it. And then just close that soil up around it. Now, again, because a tomato will root anywhere that the soil is touching it, it's now gonna have a nice deep root structure. And when these grow up and get ready to be put in the ground, I also will take some of the bottom leaves off and turn it either, you can do two things. You can either dig a really deep hole and put a lot of that root in the ground so that you again have just a little bit of that top growing, because these are indeterminate tomatoes and they are just gonna grow. Or you can dig kind of a trench, lay that tomato sideways, and then kind of lift the top so that it's looking up to the sky, and it will continue to grow upwards toward the sun. Tomatoes are pretty resilient, nifty little plants. So if you are a new gardener, tomatoes are pretty easy to learn on. There are a few tomato issues that all tomato gardeners have to deal with. Blight is one. Tomato blight can be kind of devastating the first time you see it. It's kind of scary. I've already lost a few little seedlings to blight this year. And it's just a fungus that gets on the leaves. There are several things that you can do about that. You can get an antifungal spray at your local big box store. You can use baking soda and water and spray that on the leaves. You can use like Dawn dish soap as long as it's doesn't have bleach in it, right? You don't want to use the kind of bleach in it. You can also use some other homemade organic things. So, I mean, even though tomatoes are kind of disease prone, there's enough options that you have. If you want to go completely organic, you can totally do that. Okay, so I promised you a second thing. So, don't freak out, but I'm fixing to take the top off this tomato. So, we have our first leaves on all plants, and then you have your true leaves that come off the top. So, you know, every plant kind of looks the same depending on its species of plant. So all tomatoes' first leaves look the same. All brassicas first leaves pretty much look the same. Let me see if I can show you. I know that any of these still have their first leaves, but we'll see. So these are two different kinds of brassicas. This is a mammoth red cabbage, and this is a broccoli. And these are their true leaves, right? But when they start, they all kind of have this little heart-shaped leaf, even though they're different types of plants. Because they are brassicas, they're in the same plant family, their true leaves do really look very similar. So make sure you label, because I've done that before. And been like, what is this? I don't know. Is this a broccoli? Is this a cabbage? I'm not real sure. I forgot to label it. So anyway, so what we're going to do is we're just going to take our fingernails, or if you don't have really sharp fingernails, you can use some little trimmers, and we're just going to take the top of this off. And my first leaf fell off with it, but that's okay. Because what will happen now that I've decapitated it is it will send out 2 new stems. And those 2 stems will be able to be trellised up, pruned pretty heavily so that the growth is really focused on fruit development instead of leaf development, and I will get a lot of fruit off of this little plant. Gentle as we pull them apart. And then just making sure that your hole is big enough. If you want to leave the leaf on, you can. If you want to go ahead and take the top off that, you can. And then just very gently taking your chopstick here, or your fingers, and gently pressing that down into the soil, nice and deep. And then pressing that soil around it. And there you go. Got some little tomato starts. So if you want lots of fruit, this is a good way to start. Start by planting your seedlings, letting them get a little big, repotting them, or leaving space in the pot so you can put more soil around them if you're doing 1 seed per pot, which some people like to do, and then deadheading the tops of those tomatoes, and you should have a beautiful tomato crop. Thanks for joining me, you guys. I appreciate you being with me for this journey, and as always, stay grounded, keep growing, and don't forget to water yourself.